The Golden Stallion is here for a little Wednesday Q&A, Sovereign Tech style, baby. Of course, because you're a Sovereign Tech patron. So you get to ask me all the questions that you've ever wanted to ask. And I'll tell you, folks, look, they don't have to be tech questions. They can be any kind of questions. You lob them on me. There's some I still need to get to. There's a lot of sex questions I need to get to. I mean, there's a whole slew that maybe, at some point I will. But anyway, I did something a little different this week, just to test it out. I like to post. I do this in the Sovereign Tech Uncensored Facebook group. Sometimes I do it on Twitter. I'll do it on Instagram. I'll post a little picture of me working in the BDSM studio. Of course, BDSM stands for Brian's Dungeon of Sex and Magic. And, oh boy, that's a whole conversation for another time. But I'll save it. My thoughts on black magic. But anyway, so yeah, I'll share a picture and, I'll say, all right, getting ready for your Sovereign Tech Wednesday Q&A and something like that, right? In fact, in the particular picture that I shared this time around, I was holding one of my Imperial, as in the Galactic Empire Star Wars mugs, loaded with Republic of Tea's high calf. In fact, right now, I think it's the Cinnamon Toast Black Tea. Oh, it's so good. In fact, I'm going to have a little sip right now. So I'll do that. And I said, you know what? If you want to ask a question, ask it underneath this thread. And I did this particularly in the Sovereign Tech Uncensored group, which, by the way, is still wildly popular. I mean, we only have, it's not even up to 200 people yet. It's well over 100. But, that's okay because it starts to get to unmanageable levels at certain points. I mean, more people are welcome to come, of course, and they don't have to be patrons to do it. But anyway, it's a lot of fun. That group is really being pretty enjoyable overall. Haven't had to block anybody yet. Thought a couple times about it with some, but haven't had to do that yet. And like I said, with the Sovereign Tech Uncensored group, I'll block people willy-nilly. I mean, don't take it personally. Just if I feel like blocking people, boop, I'm just going to block. That's why I'm not making it a feature of Patreon or something like that, because I don't want it to be something you feel like you are owed, like you're owed to be in that group or something. So anyway, overall been very fun. So, but underneath I was like, yeah, ask me questions. If you have questions for this week's show, I've seen other guys do that sort of thing. Like John Campia, we're right on Facebook. Of course, he has an open Q&A. It's not one that's behind a paywall, at least not yet. Give him time. In fact, I don't know what's going on with him. If he left Collider or what the fuck's going on there. But regardless, I said, he's like, you know what? Yeah, ask me some questions underneath. And so I got some questions from that. I have other questions from other venues that I'm going to get to first, but I am going to get to those questions. Another thing, of course, new issue doesn't come out till next week, but thank you so much, everybody, for your feedback on the Sovereign Tech newsletter, which you can sign up for at zog.email. The email list is already going through the fucking roof. I can't believe it, actually, just how, I mean, wow, and overall, I mean, mainly the only negative feedback I've really received has been on the formatting. Like, it doesn't work so well on mobile. Yeah, this is my first time ever really doing a newsletter like this, so I'm still like learning that and how to make it look good. And one of the annoying parts is that how the software that I use, how it previews, I use MailChimp. I mean, that when you get to the bottom of the email. When I use MailChimp, like the way they preview the email address or the way they preview the newsletter, it sometimes looks vastly different from what actually ends up in your email. So one of the easy solutions I'm going to do is at the top of the page or at the top of the newsletter, I'm just going to put view this in your browser. That way it can look normal and there's not a problem with like filtering stuff and whatever, in case you can't read it all, because some people have told me they can't even read it all because, I mean, this is a huge newsletter. Like, I mean, I'm putting as much stuff in here as I can. I want to make it worth your while. To read. I don't want it to just, because I've signed up for so many newsletters, obviously, over the years, as long as I've been on the internet, back when I had the old email address, tankprogram00@yahoo.com. I bet I could get that email back. Watch somebody scoop it out from under me. But anyway, I missed that old email. I was a teenager. Come on. And I love Tron. What do you want me to do? So anyway, So the email, I think the amount of information, like I was going to say, a lot of people put out really shitty newsletters that are obviously just about selling you shit. There's nothing really important in there. And even the stories that it'll link to are crap and you know, and are just like filler of some kind. And it's so fucking annoying and so goddamn insulting to my intelligence that what did I do? I said, well, motherfucker, I'll make an email newsletter that I'd want to read. And that's what I did. It even has sex in it. Woo. Sometimes. Every time. Come on. So anyway, thank you so much for everybody that signed up for the newsletter. Please continue to send your feedback to me on that. Like the technical feedback helps, like, you know, that it doesn't work well on mobile, or suggestions of what kind of links to put in and everything. That's so helpful. I really appreciate that. And you're just helping Sovereign Tech itself keep growing and growing and growing. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback recently from great patrons of the show. So thank you for all that, bottom line. Okay, let's get into... let's really get into the questions here. And we'll start this off with a subject that's come up a couple times. And that being, a subject recently that's come up over and over again. In fact, this past week's episode 237 of Sovereign Tech, was all about cryptocurrencies. And I was going to do a sequel episode that was all about cryptocurrencies this week. But I'm like, nah, let's rest. Let's rest on it. Let's not push it. Let's keep it. Let's move on to some other things, and then maybe the following week I'll talk about cryptos again, more, because there's a ton more stories. There's always stories. I mean, I could easily make the whole fucking show, about blockchain and cryptocurrencies and all that, but there's plenty of shows that do that. You don't need me. You don't need me to do this sort of thing. So, but every once in a while, there's, one that comes up that tickles my fancy that, I don't mind talking about and that I like to talk about, or that, the Sovereign Tech listeners just inundate me with, hey, please fucking talk about this, will you? And of course, if you're a Sovereign Tech patron, well, then I definitely talk about it, because you're the executive producers. You're the people helping make the show go round and round, be it financially or with your feedback or interaction or sharing the show or whatever else you do. You get preferential treatment, obviously. So when you want me to talk about crypto, I will. So the question came in, which was just very, very basically, do you have any issues with Dash as a cryptocurrency? If so, what are your concerns? So, I really don't have a whole lot of issues with Dash, not the technology necessarily. I know some people have problems with the masternodes concept, where, the way that decisions get made, everything kind of gets handled within Dash is by people who have really ponied up the equity to become a masternode. And part of the problem is that you never really know. And I mean, and it's not really a problem in my mind, because I want anonymity. I mean, Dash's part of its marketing is that it's a private currency. Of course, I think ZK Snarks, zero knowledge proofs do a much better job of encryption and privacy. Look, okay, let me backpedal a little bit. I said it this week on the show, and I just want to say it here again. The thing that I'm not cheerleading for Zcash here. Okay. The thing that excites me is zero knowledge proofs. That technology. There's Zencash. There's a whole slew of other projects out there. Okay. That are using zero knowledge proofs now to encrypt their shit. That's what excites me. I'm on the side of zero knowledge proofs. I'm on the side of ZeroCoin from 2013, back when that paper first fucking came out. And you know that if you've listened to the show that long. Okay, it's not like I'm not on the payroll of Zcash. Not that I wouldn't mind working for that company. Okay, I'm not. It's nothing like that. I'm just saying I'm on board with the crypto of zero knowledge proofs, which I think is one of the real superior forms of crypto out there. Okay, of encryption. You get me? So anyway, I think Dash is inferior, just as I think Monero with CryptoNote 2 is inferior to ZK Snarks. Okay, that doesn't mean it's bad. I'm just saying it's kind of inferior. But But so I really don't have any major issues with Dash. Again, there's the masternode thing. Oh, I was going to say, yeah. So with masternodes, you don't know who the masternodes are, and they can constantly shift. And one could have the concern that, well, some kind of coup or something could happen within Dash, and we'd never know who did it, blah, blah, blah. I understand those concerns. I don't necessarily agree with them, okay? Life is risk, kind of like Captain Kirk said, risk is our business, right? I mean, and that's just the nature of the human condition. Safety is an absolute illusion. When you get to the bottom of it, depending how far you want to go with that rabbit hole. But anyway, so yeah, Dash, no real problems. Again, with the technology, there's certain, so one of Dash's strengths is its community. And absolutely. And also another strength it has is its marketing. I mean, like they did it right. They did something I've been saying on Sovereign Tech for years, where you start grassroots. Okay. You don't go right after, the big whales. You don't go after the enterprise class. You don't go after a bunch of this other stuff. I mean, there's, those methods can work as well, but to really have some serious longevity. Okay. You want to start off like Bitcoin did. You start off grassroots. You go after the libertarians. You go after the cool kids. You go after, anarchists, whatever, which is exactly what Dash did. Now, admittedly, oh boy, I could go on forever about this. Okay, before I go into that, I just want to say, before somebody brings up to me, but Zcash is going after the enterprise level, stuff. What about Zcash? Like, isn't that a problem? Doesn't that debunk what you just said? Because you think Zcash is in for the long haul? No, Zcash doesn't. It doesn't matter what fucking category they go after. They're coming up with they have such a drastically new trick in crypto, that being, again, ZK snarks, that they can go after whatever category they want, and the rest of the world is just going to want the technology anyway. Dash is not so much that. Like, I don't see anybody saying, wow, Dash is such a revolutionary technological implementation. I mean, it being a platform and some of its, directions that it's going are certainly cool, but they're not necessarily bringing in anything like really that revolutionary, in my opinion. So, okay, now back to the community, like I was going to say. Because it's not revolutionary, good thing that they started grassroots, right? And no, believe me, you're not, like, if somebody says, all right, well, I don't want to start off with grassroots, so I don't want to put any money into funding people that are grassroots. Like, grassroots honestly would even be like, being an advertiser on Sovereign Tech or something. That's grassroots, because you're reaching to a passionate audience, not necessarily the most wealthy audience, even though I know some people in my audience, aren't doing too bad for themselves right now. Okay. But you get my point, right? So, a lot of cryptocurrencies don't do that. They think that they're just going to get bought out, or they're just doing bullshit ICOs and they never plan on actually delivering a product in the first place. But whatever. Anyway, so Dash is the real deal. Okay. However, some people in the community for Dash, so they definitely appealed to libertarians and ANCAPs with Dash. Okay. Some people whom I have respect for, some people whom I'm very concerned about, that they have aligned themselves with. There's a problem, and I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anybody, because we're talking about particularly the fact that Dash, kind of got involved with the libertarian and ANCAP community. There is a problem in the overall libertarian / ANCAP community that, okay, just calling it straight, the libertarian / ANCAP movement, ideology, whatever. If you don't like the word movement, okay, guess what? I don't either. But whatever you want to call it, okay, readers of Rothbard or something. It's predominantly like a male space, MALE, okay? It really is. And because, not just because of that. I mean, there's certain, I don't want to say inherent, but there are certain issues that just come with, what society kind of puts off as social norms for men. There are issues where I think that the men in the libertarian / ANCAP community are absolutely blinded to a lot of very real concerns whenever and look, I am a total ally to feminism, okay? but I'm just going to say it. They get blinded to, if there's a woman that is telling them to buy into something or to get into something or something like that, they'll just, and they don't care because they're just so goddamn excited that there's a woman involved or something. Okay. Believe me, I think a lot of people have this kind of idea of me that if it's a woman, I give them a pass, and I just, I don't care what they do. No, this is so far from fucking true. There are plenty of women in this space that I completely disagree with, and that I think are incredibly harmful, maybe even to the human condition itself. Okay, and I shouldn't have to mention some of those names. They should be obvious, I would hope. But anyway, there are some people in the Dash community who are kind of marketers that I am very concerned about, that I think like there's, I don't know what's going on. And so just because there's like I guess my point in saying this, and I'm not going to name names here, just because somebody is a name that and is schlepping around a crypto and wearing a blue t-shirt or something like that, should not inherently say, okay, oh yeah, no, then this is real. Like, then Dash is legit, blah, blah, blah. And I want you to like take a real harsh critical look maybe at what the fuck they're doing and saying and acting on YouTube. And I have concerns. So some of the people that market Dash that are talked about as being positives, they're really only positives, and they really only work because, a lot of the men, not all, a lot of the men in libertarianism and ANCAPism and all that are just so salivating over any woman that happens to remotely appeal to them or ever mention Rothbard or something like that. And it's really fucking pathetic, that's the case. But it is the case. So, and I don't know what to do about that. Maybe at some point, and I'm not going to list it off right now. I mean, if somebody wanted me to like list off the people that I trust all the way, or that I consider to be really influential or whatever, as far as actual personal freedom ideas, that's so much easier than just constantly ripping or knocking on people that aren't, because it's for me, and it's just my opinion. You can have a different fucking opinion, and that's fine. Just in my opinion, it's a very small list, So anyway, the Dash community, I get that it's considered a strength, but I think some of the people who are at the head of that community, I have very, very, not even like necessarily ideological opposition to, but like I have concerns for their health. Like I think and their mental health, and I don't know. I'm very sketchy of anything they happen to say. So when the community kind of relies on them, that's a little concerning to me. So anyway, boy, that was vague booking, huh? Vague booking on a podcast. What would you call that? Vague casting? That was some vague casting there. So overall, I don't really have any issue with Dash. Okay. If someone said, hey, do a skewering of Dash, I wouldn't do it because I don't really have anything necessarily negative to say. My only negatives that I've ever brought up, and I've brought them up before, was the reason I never paid attention to Dash was because originally when it was Darkcoin back in the day, the Darkcoin like had certain goals, like it was going to be GPU resistant and a bunch of other stuff, and it failed almost at all of those goals within like the first couple months. And so, for me, like, okay, move on, next. That was my mentality. And then it turned into Dash, and hey, okay. Also, the name sucks. Like, I'll give it that too. The name is terrible, I think, actually. I mean, it's supposed to be Digital Cash Dash, but it's a shitty fucking name. Darkcoin was a much, much better name. But anyway, nobody really, cares to ask me for naming advice, and it's probably a good idea. And guys, please take off the blinders. Like, because holy shit. All right, I'm just going to say it quick. Like, the women generally that get propped up in libertarianism and ANCAPism are often like, I mean, at the end of the day, they're just dudes with skirts. Like you're not really celebrating, in my opinion, women. I mean, I guess everything's up to taste, except for like, the only one that really got, I think, the attention. I mean, sadly, a lot of it was negative, but a lot of the positive attention and kind of has the branding force behind herself that deserves it is Kathy Reisenwitz. I mean, she's fucking awesome. She's phenomenal, but so many of the other ones like never really get the, I could talk about this forever, and part of it is too, that really like, I mean, this goes for guy or gal, but if you take a stand, an ideological stance, or call out a celebritarian or something, the shitstorm that the person that does the calling out or gives the ideological stance, or ideological opposition that they get, I mean, they get brutalized when it might be over practically nothing, or it could be over something as serious as accusations of rape that may be quite provable. It's mind-boggling to me. And so honestly, a lot of women in this space, they shut their mouths, because why would they put themselves through the stupid fucking backlash of a bunch of, look, pardon me for the term, but I'm just going to say it, for a bunch of Aspergery fucking dudes, that can't take a social cue or a fucking hint for anything. Pisses me off, I mean, and of course the age-old question comes up: why aren't there more women in Liberty? Gee, I fucking wonder. Because if they have a problem, they get told to shut up, or if they have a different idea from what Holy Rothbard said, they get oh no, you're never going to talk on a stage again. You're not invited. Don't you understand? You need to read this book, this book, this book, this book. Oh, you're a single mother? Well, that's your problem, bitch. It gets outrageous how these people, how women get treated in this space. I know the horror stories. Do you understand that at events, I've had women ask me, I'm not the only guy that I have another friend who he at events in the past has been asked to effectively, even though they won't exactly say it, to effectively pretend to be their boyfriend just so they'll be left the fuck alone. Ooh, man. So it's tough, I mean, some people get that's life, right? Some people get the credit they deserve, others don't. It's one of the things, I'll tell you, I wasn't planning on talking about all this, but what the fuck ever. It's one of the things that really attracted me to anarchism, and actually originally anarcho-capitalism, was I thought that that how you made it in the liberty movement was through meritocracy, was you made it on merit. Not on scamming, not on buying likes or followers or buying a bunch of other horse shit online. Okay. Buying like, I don't mean buying things. It's great. People release books or they do stuff like that. Yeah, go ahead, buy it. Okay. I'm talking about like buying followings and all this stuff. Not through that. Not through backroom deals or like cabal Facebook groups where people are talking behind the scenes about this person or that person, or they're creating their own marketing schemes and all this shit. I thought it was through actual merit. Like, what the fuck was that album Backwards, right? By Eric July. Listen, if I haven't proved it yet, my musical knowledge, now, yeah, art is up to taste, no doubt about it, okay? If I haven't proved my musical knowledge yet, I don't know how, I don't know what else I can do. Do you need me to start listing off chords that I understand? I write my own music, and I'm not even saying it's great music. Of course, it's not necessarily intended to be. It has a purpose, okay? It's a backdrop to a story. But, I see that shit, and how many people, just seemingly out of nowhere, all said, oh, this is such a great album. And I'm listening, what the fuck are you talking about? No, this is pure shit. And to make it worse, like it was coming, like some of the people I know, I've known them for years. They don't listen to metal. They don't listen to rap even. They're lucky if they listen to country or some other kind of stuff. And they're here saying, oh, what a great album, what blah, 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 blah. No, there was a fucking group that somehow all coordinated and said, all right, everybody, let's pump Eric July's Backwards album or something. I mean, and that's not merit. That album should have been talked about, prompted, based upon whether the music was rock solid or not. And you ask anybody honest, and there's plenty of them, people with names, and they'll tell you that they wasted their life listening to that. There's no merit involved at all. Or there's people who have scammed constantly just in the past 5 years. And yet they still get invited to events, to talk at events. They still get respected. They still get blah, 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 blah. You know, they get all the adulation and blah and whatever else. Under merit, they should be, knocked off the totem pole, right? But no. And that's something that pisses me off so bad. Because, I mean, that was supposed to be how this was supposed to work, is that in this community, yeah, we do things based on, man's word is his bond, meritocracy. We're going to base things on merit. You got to have the ability. You do the work, you get paid. You do the work, then there's something, you get to pay off, whatever. No, it's the same horse shit. Anybody, or not anybody, most of the people that have a name in this whole fucking thing, are scamming people right and left. Or, I mean, look, I'll quote Ayn Rand for you. Does that help? She said, making money, doing business, playing off of people's ignorance is not productive achievement. And productive achievement is what she said is one of the goals of life, the heroic life. Okay? Pursuing happiness, productive achievement, all that. Yet these people unquestionably play and feed off of people's ignorance. Be it new blood that comes into the liberty movement or whatever. I read the books, and the book said this isn't how this fucking shit's supposed to work. But it does. So, yeah, you have a good old boys network. You've got Hoppe should be so proud. He has his natural elites, right? Is that it from that pamphlet? I have that pamphlet. I know the score. Right? You have like the natural scholars and the natural elites. Yeah, I guess we've got our quote unquote natural elites. Of course, I would argue that it's not natural, and Ayn Rand would have said the same. She would have backed my ass up. What does anybody care? So anyway, whatever. People complain about the liberty movement, and you know what happens when you complain and you bring up valid points? People just, I don't know, they go dead inside or something, and they just say, oh no, it's not like that, but this person's nice. Or they insult you for complaining about it and say you sound like, I don't know, some kind of pejorative thing. And so there, yeah. So people just leave, they just walk away. I was on the Lulberts. I wasn't on it, but I was talked about quite a bit by Jim Jesus. He kept cracking little jokes about me. I loved it. It was a lot of fun. But he had a point. He's like, he was complaining about like these idiot ANCAP YouTubers, and he was right to complain about it. And I was like, good. Someone else has finally come, or not finally, because I know others have done it, or someone used their voice to come out and say, motherfucker, like this is crazy. Nobody should be listening to these people. These people are so goddamn stupid. And Jim Jesus and I don't agree on everything. I know that for a fact. Okay. But it was really refreshing to hear that. And then he even said, he's like, or you can listen to Brian Sovereign, who's libertarian-ish. And I was like, yes. Like that made me feel so good inside, libertarian-ish. Because why would anybody want to be a part of that boys club? I don't know. Anyway, had a little more tea there. Hi, calf. Woo! Get that body rocking. So I've spent way more time than I expected talking about this sort of thing. So let's get into these other questions that I had lined up. Like I said at the beginning of the show, before we went on this fucking tirade, and I apologize if people found that boring. You can let me know, give me feedback on it. That's fine. And if you disagree with me, look, I know there's patrons who disagree with me on so many things. Okay. And yet we still get along. Why? Because, we appreciate the work. In fact, somebody commented on speaking of YouTube videos, on my YouTube video about egoism, which is a very popular video. But the person effectively said that I don't agree with your ideology, but I think this video is so brilliant and so intelligent that I respect, exactly I respect what you're saying, that you can go look it up. Go find my YouTube video. It's right there. You can read it for yourself. I don't know who the fuck the person is. But that's it. Good. As long as we can fucking respect each other and maybe work a little bit more towards where, merit stands up and is appreciated. And when someone, scams, or when someone, does horrendous things and is manipulative to women and, and jerks off in parking lots and whatever else, maybe we can, you know what I mean by that. Hey, then, yeah, maybe we can get somewhere and we can, we can actually, enter the arena of ideas peacefully and converse, because I love to do that. I am absolutely game to talk, ANCAPism. Really, I really am. If you want to debate the ideas, I'll have a debate and I won't scream and holler. I'm all for intellectual debate. Anyway, in fact, I'm going to be doing this on this week's episode, and you can take advantage of it as well if you want. There's a new app that came out called Sarahah. I don't know if that's exactly how you pronounce it, but it's Sarahah. Sarahah.com. I'll put a link in the show notes. I created an account on it. Now, of course, and I'll talk about this app more in depth. Could there be problems with it? Maybe. Okay, but all it is just, it's kind of like the app Secret that was really popular in Silicon Valley a couple of years ago or a year ago or something until it shut down. What it is, it lets you completely anonymously, because you don't even have to have an account, share comments with people. And you can tell them how you feel about things. Like mine is sovereign.sarahah.com. Just like my name, Sovryn. And people have already left some nice things, but some people have left some very nasty things. Some people have left some critiques that I think are fair and that I'm actually going to address them. So if you want to comment on my Sarahah, okay, I'm going to do a whole segment of my show where I talk about Sarahah, and then I'm going to go down what people have said, because some of them are fair, some of them are misunderstandings. And I'm gonna clarify on it, but it's amazing. It shows the power of anonymity. I'm gonna bring this point up on Sovereign Tech this week. It shows the power of anonymity. When people feel anonymous, they'll tell you the truth, and that's the importance of privacy and anonymity. I'll make that point on the show. And I'll talk about. I'm happy to talk about whatever these people happen to say. So anyway, Let's get into the questions. These are just from the Facebook. I'm not using any of the comments from my Sarahah account, but I'll leave that open for people to use whenever, And again, you don't have to make an account. So if you're concerned about being de-anonymized because you had to make an account and then one day someone's going to crack in and show who did what, no, like you don't have to have an account. You can just go to that URL and type something in. So anyway, all right, let's get into these questions here. I guess I'll do the first one. There's like three of them, so I'll start with this. I have one. What is your view/advice on using copyrighted music on podcasts? The general consensus in the podcasting community is don't do it. I am aware you are supposed to have the mechanical license to do this, the same one you would obtain if you were to release a CD. I include full TV theme songs this is a person that has their own podcast called Forgotten TV. I don't mind mentioning it. They're a patron. I include full TV theme songs that are 28 to 47 years old on my show, again, Forgotten TV, which I've listened to. It's an enjoyable podcast, and wonder if it'll get hit one day with a lawsuit. I don't just play music. It's simply ignore or it's wrapped in a context of review, criticism, and commentary. Some podcasts simply ignore copyright altogether, even some that their entire livelihood is built on their show. The Survival Podcast plays a song at a song of the day at the end. Thanks. Okay, so this is a great question, and this is something that since I'm building my own radio network, online radio network, since I'm building my own radio network that I've looked into. Now, the way that I'm building the online radio network, I actually do have that license to where I can play any music that I want at any time. However, legally, technically, once it gets removed from the radio network, and if it became like a podcast itself that was released, that music would technically be out of copyright. It'd be illegal for me to do that. Another show that, for example, that uses copyrighted music is the School Sucks podcast, which originally Brett and I have talked about this. I mean, we're friends, Brett originally was terrified to do that. And in fact, he would even go so far as to change the tempo and kind of the pitch of some of the music, because YouTube was taking down, when their copyright censors were in full force. I mean, and they still kind of are, their algorithms, they would take down his videos. And so he would alter it enough to where, it wouldn't catch it just by a little bit. You could barely hear the difference. If you didn't know the song, you might not have even noticed the difference. So that's something that he would do. He is to the point now where he just doesn't care anymore. He just lets it ride. Myself, if you listen to early episodes of Sovereign Tech, yeah, I absolutely used all public domain music, stuff that was either that is new, that was purposely put into the public domain, or stuff that, that had fallen out of copyright and whatever. So, but I got to the point as well. And here's the point that I got to. Here's my way of thinking on it. I got to the point where I started using copyrighted music. I mean, like the song Supervillain by Powerman 5000 is as connected to Sovereign Tech as anything else could be connected to Sovereign Tech. People just instantly think of it, and it's a great song, and I might bring it back. The opening music that exists in the show now is in a weird gray area of copyright music. It's actually from one of the Pornosonic releases. Which is all unreleased 70s porno music. And anyway, that's a long story. Some of the other stuff, falls under copyright. So the point that I got to was that if you are, and I'll explain the difference. If it is something you are putting out there for free, I don't know what exactly kind of case could get made by that. Meaning that, I'm not charging you to hear the episodes of Sovereign Tech where Supervillain would play, or Pornosonic plays, or, the Spy Hunter theme plays, or something like that. Okay. I use some copyrighted sound effects for the work that I do, for the fiction work for the Sovereign Universe. Okay. Again, I charge no money for that. And so because I'm not necessarily really making money off of that. Okay. Now I make money off of sponsors, but that's a very different, situation. Okay. How the sponsors work out, but I'm not charging you to get access to this song. Okay. Is my point. So that's why I'm not concerned about using copyrighted stuff anymore. That's my way of thinking. I'm not saying that that's right. And I would hate it if somebody, did the same thing I do and they, got a copyright notice or something and they went to, had to go to court and pay out a ton of money. That would suck. Okay. But yeah, that's my way of thinking. So now notice that when I do Patreon episodes, I don't think I've ever put copyrighted material into the Patreon episodes. And reason being, all I have is my opening beep, which is not copyrighted. And I have my little sound at the end, not copyrighted. That closes out the show. And that's because it's behind a paywall. And so I wouldn't want them to come after me saying, hey, you're using copyrighted material and you're making money off of it, because you're enticing people to, you're behind a paywall with it. So yeah, so that's kind of my twisted logic on the whole matter. That's my opinion of how I go forward with things. I know there's people who think, well, I bought the song on iTunes, so I'll play it in one episode. That 99 cents is worth me playing in one of my episodes or something. I know people that go that route. Maybe, I don't know. I think that's in as much a legally dubious area as my way of thinking is. My opinion on it. But that's all I've got are opinions. So, I forget exactly. There's two rules that you can't really do on the radio where you get where the federal government can come after you effectively. One of them is if you argue for violent revolution against the government or something, which I never do. I never argue for the use of lethal force, ever. And I forget there's another one where there's certain things that you just kind of can't say, be it on podcasts or radio or whatever, but I really should remember. That's kind of, I guess in a way it's important, though I really don't care, about the federal government. So that's my way of thinking, is that if you are charging for what people are hearing, okay, not talking about sponsors, talking about if you are charging for what people are hearing, then I would not recommend using copyright, because I think a case could be made against you. But if it's just something put out there for free, you're not making money off of it. Not really. You're not making money off of necessarily that episode or something. And I don't think that it would really put you over the top necessarily. If my show, Supervillain is not what made my show. It fucking didn't. Okay. My show stands on its own merits. Meritocracy, right? Of me. It's what I say, what I bring to the table, blah, blah, blah. All that other stuff can really fall away. You still have sovereign tech. But I've never run into an issue, and I host it on SoundCloud, where SoundCloud has the same algorithms to make sure certain things aren't there. Certain music isn't being shared or sold or whatever that shouldn't be. So I feel pretty confident in doing that. But please, it's not legal advice. I'm just telling you my way of thinking on it, is that because I don't charge for it, I don't charge people for it. It's not a big deal. So anyway, okay. I don't want to go over an hour with this, and I want to get in. There's some other very genuinely fascinating questions to get into, but there's that. So let's see. I'll get to this one. There was another one, but just in case I can't get to it. Did you hear about Disney's move to start their own streaming service? And apparently some indie wrestling, of course it's pro wrestling, promotions are putting content on Twitch since YouTube started fucking with the monetization criteria. Okay, yeah, so I have heard about, I did hear, and this is just this is really fresh. This is a day old, and there's already been updates about this. Supposedly Disney's going to make 2 streaming channels, not just one. And the concern was, or where a lot of this, came across my radar, was that Star Wars, which had an exclusivity deal with Netflix for those movies to be streamed on Netflix, along with a lot of other Disney content and Marvel content, right? Like Jessica Jones, Daredevil, Punisher, Iron Fist, whatever, that are big deal shows that I don't watch. But I get it. They're big deals on Netflix and everything. Or now The Defenders just came out, right? So the concern was that everything's going to end up leaving Netflix. A lot of things that people are really excited about, especially a lot of the Marvel properties. And you're going to have to watch, you're going to have to pay for another streaming service to be able to do that, one from Disney. Now, the update from Bob Iger, who's the fucking CEO of Disney, so I assume he knows what he's talking about. The update is that the Marvel content will not be pulled. He says the Disney content, like Frozen, a lot of the movies that are more attributed to the Disney name, as to where Star Wars, right, gets attributed to Lucasfilm, even though Lucasfilm is just a sub-department within Disney now. Or, like Daredevil and all that, that's Marvel, even though Marvel is just a sub-department of Disney now. So they're talking about the things that are directly attributed to Disney, like far more directly, like the Disney movies, Lion King, that kind of shit. Okay. That will all go to the Disney streaming service. However, it is not clear that Star Wars will leave Netflix. And also it is not clear, it has been made clear by Bob Iger that actually, because the Disney channels aren't going to start until 2019, but that seasons of Marvel shows on Netflix will continue on Netflix past 2019. So it would appear that Marvel is going to be on Netflix with no problem. Okay, so Disney's not taking everything away. It's just more their not to say just their kiddie content or something, but it's more their directly branded content, directly Disney branded content that's going to be going there. Now, this whole streaming thing, I mean, there's a huge conversation to have around this. I want to start off by saying that, look, if they ever want to make a Star Wars channel, I will pay for that. All right, I will absolutely pay for a Star Wars channel. And they're starting to do that. Like on YouTube, there's the Star Wars show. I think there's a new show coming out maybe in 2018 that's like science and Star Wars or something. They're starting to make a lot of like little side shows around Star Wars. Okay, this is very similar to what the WWE Network does, which I also think is well worth the $10. I mean, all right, the WWE Network, I mean, it's stupid because it's stupid in a good way. You have decades worth of content. Of course you can have your own streaming. I mean, literal decades worth of niche, relevant content. Okay. It's not like Netflix where Netflix just has a little bit of everything, right? This is all kind of a similar content, blah, blah, blah. It makes a ton of sense, to charge people $10 a month, and you have constant new content. You have the guaranteed pay-per-views every month that you get for the $10 a month. I mean, it's just a phenomenal fucking value. I could see Star Wars, and I've said this before, I could see Star Wars doing the same thing. I would pay for that. Star Trek is actually the closer one that could pull that off, but I don't know that CBS is ever going to do it, and I don't know if CBS All Access is really going to, ever take off on its own anyway. But this is going to end up becoming a problem where not everybody's going to be willing to pay $10 a month for, 20 different fucking streaming services. It's not going to happen. And eventually the piper's going to have to get paid on that. And, right. I mean, this is where when something becomes like the perceived new growth strategy for large corporations and whatever else, this is what happens is you get a lot of Me Too products, which CBS All Access is a Me Too product. Honestly, HBO Go, most people, they pay for HBO Go for a month, when the new Game of Thrones comes out or something, and then they cancel it. Okay. And they don't stick with it. Generally, that's how people interact with this sort of thing. Same might be, I mean, I know some people that do the same thing with Netflix, so it's not like they're the only ones, but I think Netflix is now just like every month there's some great fucking show that they're putting out, like Voltron season 3. Holy shit. Woo, baby. You want to talk about some of the best fucking TV on planet Earth right now? That's season 3. Oh man. I'll do a review eventually on Sovereign Tech proper, but Jesus fucking Christ. that is amazing. So anyway, sorry. Whew, got a little ahead of myself here. So eventually this will get whittled down. You'll have the Me Too products and then they'll die off and everybody will end up either on, just because of the nature of things, as it stands in our government run world, you will end up with where, it's going to be probably Netflix and Amazon Prime that are, I mean, and for most people, that's what it is anyway, but everybody else will just realize that that's what it needs to be. And you'll have some of your niche products, like kind of maybe like a Crunchyroll, right, for anime, or you'll have the WWE Network. That's just always going to be a thing, and it's already a tremendous success. Or, you're going to end up with maybe a Star Wars, network, or a Star Trek network, which those could work. There's enough content. There's enough franchise power to where I think that could really happen. So, and Disney, here's the funny thing. I don't think it's going to work with Disney, not with just their own content. They've done this before. They used to charge for the Disney Channel 20 years ago, and people stopped paying. They're like, fuck this. There wasn't enough. Now, granted, Disney has a lot of their own unique content now, but I don't know. If anybody else has a chance of kind of becoming a third network in this whole game, even more than HBO, it's probably Disney that could do it. Boy, especially if they did yank their Marvel and their Star Wars content. I mean, then it would just go through the roof. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's unique, right? Because you're going to be giving it to the, schlepping it off to the kids. So maybe they have a chance, with Disney doing it. But yeah, certainly a lot of people are doing that because they're running it. Netflix is maybe trying to cartelize people into crazy prices to put their content on Netflix, but it's so important for the studios to put their stuff onto Netflix. Like was mentioned also that, now there's indie wrestling promotions that are airing all of their stuff on Twitch, which is just Amazon. Let's be clear about that. Because YouTube is being really ugly with, how you can make money off of YouTube, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying there isn't room for disruption, and there is, and this is kind of the proof, but we're really not going to end up in that future where you're paying for 20 different $10 streaming services to get stuff done. I don't even think Hulu's been playing some big risks, but I don't think they have enough name. I don't even think they're going to end up being the big deal. And a lot of people are pulling from Hulu anyway. So yeah, I know Hulu might think would be the number 3 spot, but I think there's room for a number 3 spot, just like there is in gaming consoles, right? There's always room for the number 3. But right now, number 2 are Amazon Prime, and which would also be Twitch, after a fashion, and I mean the same company, and Netflix, and then number 3 right now maybe would be Hulu, but I could really see Disney taking that spot, and then yeah, like I said, then you're always going to have your niche ones. You're always going to have your WWE Network, which is just such a great example of how to do business. The WWE always is. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. What do we have as far as, but I mean, it would have been a very different conversation if Disney was yanking Star Wars and Marvel from Netflix, but they're not. That's not happening now. So I don't think it's as big a concern. And if, Disney's got to make, I mean, like Apple's little, their little streaming stuff, the internal content that they're making is failing so hard. I mean, it's really bad. So just because, it's a big company doesn't mean that they can make great content. So Disney might end up falling flat on their face. And it's actually a good move on their part to not take everything away from Netflix or whatever in case they need to retrench, in case, the Disney, their new Disney channel isn't going to work, because it didn't work the last time when it was just on cable. Okay, so we got about 10 minutes. Let's try on the other question here. If you could travel back in time to prevent any single event from happening, what would you prevent? Follow up. How would preventing said event from happening change our present day? So I actually answered this question in the past. This person re-asked it, which is fine. I might readdress the question quick, but then the person kind of pared it down and said, I'll modify. If you could prevent William the Conqueror from invading England, would you? If so, how do you think that would change our present day? Ooh, boy, this is this is a big question. So for those that don't know who William the Conqueror is, William the Conqueror, or as I like to call, and it's actually a technical term, William the Bastard. William the Bastard, it was a Norman, which Normans were the descendants of Nordic Vikings who went into France and took over an area of France called, set up an area of France called Normandy. They went north, and William the Conqueror, what was it, 1066, when he finally took over the Battle of Hastings. He went to England, conquered it. Okay, that's why they call him William the Conqueror. Again, I'll call him William the Bastard. And this event, I mean, after, William the Bastard didn't rule for the longest amount of time. 20 years is a long time, but, well, I guess that's a fairly long time. But his rule after that 20 years, so the first few years of it were, the first 5 or so years, very ugly situation. Downright anarchistic situation in Britain itself. Okay. However, this would change when he finally dies in 1087. So yeah, 1066, and he died in 10. Yeah, all right. So about 20 years, a little over. When he dies in 1087, his sons effectively go into a civil war in England, and it creates all kinds of problems. However, in that 20 some odd years of William the Bastard's reign, in England, he creates really everything that you think of as far as England, particularly like medieval England. He brings on, like, you think when you think of England, you think castles. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that. With you thinking that way anyway. I mean, it makes sense. There were no castles in England before 1066. Those were all, like, that whole style, that whole notion, all these things. William the Bastard brought feudalism to England. He literally changed the face of Europe. Not to get into any kind of great man theory, but he took, little pieces of this, like, oh, this is how things work in Scandinavia. So we're going to do, titles and lords and all this different shit. And we're going to build castles and fortifications. And that's really all castles are, just fortification, fortified houses, for the various royalty and feudal lords. We'll do this. And he just made this impressive hybrid that, is what really caused Britain to be the powerhouse in Europe that it was, that it appreciated being. One could argue to this day, but certainly at least until the 20th century. Everything you think of as far as the Middle Ages, as far as medieval times and all that, all come from William the Bastard. And even, it's hard to believe, but during his reign, English was considered an ugly language. It was a secondary language. Latin and French were lingua franca in the, they were the, language of the day. They were the lingua du jour. I think that's mixing French and Latin, which is fitting, I suppose. During his reign. English wouldn't become a big deal until much later, and really that had more to do with the church split than anything else. So for a while, ironically, England was not an English-speaking country because of William the Bastard. There's so many cultural forces. There's so many things that really that whole conquerorship did, and because of the setting up of castles, the fortification, and everything, nobody could best him. Again, the only thing that really did any harm to William the Bastard's reign was his own sons fighting with themselves. So, yeah, I understand. I think I understand why the person, why the patron asked the question that way. What would you do about William the Conqueror? Because it so much in many ways brought our modern world to fruition, because it created a stability that Europe had not enjoyed since really the fall of Rome. Now, when he originally asked this question, this is way, way back in the early Patreon Q&A episodes. When he originally asked this question, I think my answer was that I would stop the fall of Rome, because then you don't need, in many ways, what William the Conqueror, William the Bastard did, because Rome would have never fallen, and we'd be in space right now, because of the ability for technological advancements and all of that. Now the difference, and this kind of gets into the second part of the question here that was asked. If you did stop William the Bastard from conquering Britain, how would have things changed? Well, here's the thing though. One of the major problems, because while it sounds like I'm being complimentary towards William the Bastard's reign, there is an inherent issue why, because of what happens with William the Bastard, why you end up with medieval times and in many ways the Dark Ages for some time, coming out of his style of reign, his style of rulership, that being feudalism, because feudalism's not a good thing. Okay, let's make that abundantly clear. I know some people argue for feudalism. I would not. Some people who consider themselves into liberty would argue for feudalism. I absolutely do not do that. Here's kind of the main difference, is that feudalism was really held together by religion, by a hybrid existence with religion. Feudalism without religion, or something comparable to religion, won't stand, because people just won't buy into it. Like, there's not enough to trick them to fall for the fact that they're not, addressing their own needs. So the difference between William the Conqueror and Rome is that Rome, while there was religion, it was religions. There were, you had a lot of, you had the freedom to worship in a billion different ways in Rome. Or you had the freedom, and yes, there were atheists back then, you had the freedom to not worship at all. As to where under William the Bastard, oh no, You had religion, and you had to follow it. You had to, and you even had the religious languages, like you had to learn the Holy Latin to understand things, which again was one of the two major languages in, William the Bastard's day during his reign. So because of that, you end up with, because it wasn't like Rome where there was relatively free expression, I'm not putting Rome on any kind of like crazy pedestal or something like it was some kind of libertarian paradise. It was not. Okay. But you had a lot of social freedom within Rome, which is what allowed for a lot of the technological development. Now, some of that technological development was killing them. For example, aqueduct systems, plumbing that was all with lead pipes, that was literally driving everybody insane, but was also growing the empire and, getting water to everybody and feeding everybody and allowing the empire, to grow in a very real sense. Okay. Not just expand, but, in ways, in civil ways that it was able to grow. But regardless, because of social freedoms, they were able to advance the human condition overall. Okay, as to where under William the Bastard, there were no social freedoms. It was feudalism. Okay, and while that feudalism, fortified William the Bastard's position, in Britain and was just, again, the iron fist, which that phrase, could almost start with him if it wanted to, in many ways, because it was deemed and seen as so successful, it got applied across Europe. Okay, but because there was no social freedoms, nobody really advanced past the changes, the tyrannical changes that William the Bastard made. Now, some people can say, oh, well, there's certain cultural things. Yes, he has completely affected the culture of Britain to this day, and some people want to see some of those as kind of positives. But bottom line being is that he invented and created feudalism. And that's just a bad thing. Now, what would happen if somebody stopped him? If he didn't win the Battle of Hastings, what would the world look like now? Honestly, there probably would have been somebody else. If it wasn't going to be William the Bastard, it would have ended up being somebody else. There is, I think, to some degree, one could get a little conspiratorial because the Normans were the descendants of, or were effectively Vikings. There's theories, I'll put it that way. There's theories that the Vikings are actually, and please, I'm tossing this is way left field. Okay. I'm not going to give you a huge breakdown. I talked about this, I think, in the Monticello episode that I did for Patreon. You can look that up. I might have talked about some of this, but there are theories that the Vikings themselves are actually the lost 10 tribes of Israel, right? We know where the Jews are, but what happened to the other tribes? We know where the tribe of Benjamin, the tribe of Levi, and and all that. We know where in the tribe of Judah, we know where they are, but where's the rest? And some people argue that they're actually the Vikings, and that's such a huge topic to get into. But it's interesting that British monarchy, would take on a lot of Jewish lore, not just Christian lore, but a lot of Jewish lore and a lot of other things. And my point in sharing this is that William the Bastard may have felt that he was on some kind of holy mission, and that he was reconquering an area that had a history most people don't know about. And there's some truth to this. For example, and I'm not just talking about Stonehenge, which is actually Superhenge. It's a system of henges. It's not just one. For example, some of the oldest roads in the world are still being found. And we're talking roads 13,000 years old, crazy amounts of years old. Obvious roads. There are roads, some of the oldest roads in the world are in Britain. There was some kind of civilization there that we don't totally understand. We've talked about some of them on during tech history segments on sovereign tech, or like in Scotland, where they're finding, tens of thousands of years old, like caches of weapons and everything underneath, old monasteries or churches that point to something, some kind of history that was there. You have Oh boy. I mean, there's a lot. Well, you have the megalithic yard, which if you ever want to do research into the megalithic yard, that will lead you directly to kind of the Vikings and even Judaism, in a way. But, a lot of the megalithic yard's use was first discovered. Its use was first discovered in Britain. There's a lot there. Okay. And not even getting into the Druids or none of that shit. And so bottom line being, and maybe Rome knew some of this, and that's why they went up to Britain at some point. But bottom line being is that there may have been a secret holy charge that nobody really knows that William the Bastard was acting upon, and why it was so important for him to get to Britain and to do what he did. I mean, there's a lot of other reasons that, the normal reasons that get laid out for the Normans as to why they did it. But anyway, yeah. So what would things look like? Yeah, I really do think somebody else just would have done it sooner or later. There seems to be there is some kind of historical importance to that little island. I mean, and I could go on and on talking about High Brazil off of its coast, which that's theoretical. A lot of other things. So yeah, we may be. I mean, I don't think we'd be. I guess to answer what would things look like, might not have ever gotten to America, or at least, the Europeans may not have gotten to America, as it were. As bad as William the Bastard kind of was, I don't know. I mean, maybe, what I think would have eventually happened, there would have been some kind of resurgence of. So thinking about it, I'm kind of thinking in real time. Here's what I think would happen if William the Bastard didn't do his business at the Battle of Hastings. I think there would have been a second, or third, if you want to get technical, I guess. There would have been a third kingdom in Egypt. I think that's where, because it would have been far enough removed from a lot of the barbarian hordes and other things that were happening throughout Europe proper, before 1066. I really think there would have been some kind of resurgence, because I still think the Byzantine Empire would have fallen away because there were problems there. They kind of had an identity crisis. But yeah, I think there would have been a new Egyptian empire, and that would have led to most of what we, still experience today, as far as development and all that. It would have taken on a path probably similar to Rome, and it would have learned a lot from Rome, in that you don't want to, there's degrees of social freedom and freedom of expression that, that you want. So, or not that you want, but that allows an empire to thrive. So that's kind of my guess. So we still would have ended up here. It might have taken longer. I'll admit that might have taken longer. So, because the one event that I would change might even if I was to answer that question, more openly, not under the, filter of William the Bastard. I think before I said I would stop the Roman Empire from falling, maybe I actually would have stopped the Egyptian Empire from falling. Maybe I would have stopped the reign of Akhenaten from his family line coming to an end. From Tutankhamun being killed, or however it all ended up taking shape, and then because that's a time where that empire was going through major social reforms and freedom of expression. And that could have actually led to, you never would have had the Greek Empire. You never would have had the Roman Empire. You would have just instantly gone from new kingdom of Egypt, at that time, not the new kingdom that I theorized would crop up without William the Bastard. But you'd end up with, new kingdom Egypt just morphing into, something closer to what the Roman Empire was looking like towards the end. And it would just spread and spread and spread all the way around the world. I mean, there's even arguments that the Egyptians went to the Americas, and there's interesting arguments to be made around that. So, who knows how that could have shaped up, but that's probably the event. If I could stop some kind of like great man theory historical event from happening, I would keep the priesthood from killing off the reforms and I guess effectively the family line of Akhenaten in Egypt. And I think we would well be into space by now. I mean, by a long shot, we would be in space. And I think there would be a lot of, I think technology, like there would be a lot of very interesting, maybe even philosophical advances that would have flourished out of that. So anyway, but I'm just, I'm just going wild with that. So I'll stop because now I think I'm just flapping my yap and we're an hour and 10 in. So anyway, there's your questions for this week. Whew, I hope you enjoyed it. Talked about a lot of stuff I didn't plan on. But hey, it happened. So New Sex and Science Hour will be out this week. And of course, I got a dynamite Sovereign Tech lined up for you. If you want to get in your comments on my sovereign.sarahah, .com, account, and you can be totally anonymous, and I'll address them and I'll talk about them and I'll read them. And I'll do that this week on the Prime show of Sovereign Tech. Anyway, okay, that's it. The link is in the show notes for that. I will see you on the other side.